Over the last 15 years in the data engineering and architecture space, a lot has changed. And AI brings about a different dimension. In particular, that jump out to me are the speed of delivery, which is the ability to capture requirements and building rough designs. And number two are the kinds of expectations people have. Architecture is about taking a holistic perspective of the enterprise. You can use many frameworks, but in particular, the most common that I've used are TOGAF, which encourages the division of the enterprise according to 4 dimensions. That's business, data, applications, and technology. Through decomposing each domain and how they interact, an architect's job is to identify capabilities, which are revenue-generating abilities the company must have, and 2, supporting abilities, which are the things like technology which enable the capabilities. After we understand the structure of the enterprise, the next thing is to understand the value chains. These are the series of steps required to generate revenue at a much finer level of detail, whereas a capability is something more broad, and the supporting abilities are sub-children of that complex thing that are also required and important. And underneath that, we'll have a particular value chain, which are more of a tactical and practical thing that happens every day. And when I talk about the speed of delivery, what I'm referring to is the ability to quickly decompose and identify the needs, expectations, and requirements, and convert that into a schema or a taxonomy, which enables the communication across business domains. All right, so let me break that down. During a series of meetings, we establish what the needs and expectations and requirements are. Now, you can't talk about those things in isolation because an architecture cannot be built on requirements alone. You need to have requirements, expectations of the expectations that you're trying to derive from those requirements, and also the needs. And the needs of the business are oftentimes in contention with the expectations and the requirements. So it's the job of the architect to ensure that all 3 are being covered. And what I mean by converting that into a taxonomy, what I'm trying to do is understand the psychological relationship between how people talk about the business and what's actually happening on the ground. Okay, and I want to jump into a book that I really like, and this is The Psychology of Intelligence Analysis. I highly recommend it. And the first chapter is thinking about thinking, and I'll read the intro. Of the diverse problems that impede accurate intelligence analysis, those inherent in human mental processes are surely among the most important and most difficult to deal with. Intelligence analysis is fundamentally a mental process, but understanding this process is hindered by the lack of conscious awareness of the workings of our own minds. A basic finding of cognitive psychology is that people have no conscious experience of most of what happens in the human mind. Many functions associated with perception, memory, and information processing are conducted prior to and independently of any conscious direction. What appears spontaneously in consciousness is the result of thinking, not the process of thinking. Weakness and bias inherent in human thinking processes can be demonstrated through carefully designed experiments. They can be alleviated by conscious application of tools and techniques. This should be in the analytical tradecraft and toolkit of all intelligence analysts. So this book is core and probably one of my secret tools that I've used and as working as an architect. This is about, really it's about strategic empathy, right? It's the idea that you should travel to the location mentally and emotionally to the people that you're dealing with and handling, and ensuring that that the words they're using are clearly understood in their own framework, right? So someone might say they need a database, but to them a database is simply an Excel spreadsheet, right? But to me a database is something way more complicated. So I need to understand more clearly what they mean by, do they really have a storage problem, or do they have a data management problem, which is something completely different. So I need to, half the job of being an architect is actually being a therapist. So you're 50% therapist and 50% salesman, and that's what an architect is. Okay. So chapter 2, I won't go through every chapter, but the first 2 chapters are important. So chapter 2 is about why we can't see what is there to be seen. So the process of perception links people to their environment, and it's critical to accurate understanding of the world about us. Accurate intelligence analysis obviously requires accurate perception, yet research into human perception demonstrates that the process is beset by many pitfalls. Moreover, the circumstances under which intelligence analysis is conducted are precisely the circumstances in which accurate perception tends to be the most difficult. This chapter discusses perception in general and applies this information to illuminate some of the difficulties of intelligence analysis. And intelligence analysis is exactly what everyone does nowadays, especially with AI. They're always trying to understand and apply data strategically, and this is what intelligence is. I want to go over just briefly an architecture framework that I grew up as an architect using. This is called the TOGAF, stands for the Open Group Framework for deriving and building an architecture. So as we see here on the right, this is a model. This is a model that describes the process, or they should say the phase gates of how you develop a new capability within a business. And as we stated before, a capability is something that it's a required set of abilities that generate revenue. Okay, so I can put a whole video together in each phase, but the reality is I'll do something quick. Everything starts in the preliminary phase. Preliminary phase is all about understanding the needs and expectations at a high level of the people who you're working with, setting basic goals, getting funding, just really the groundwork. And then as you iterate through the framework clockwise, you see that we start with architecture vision, and this is where we get down to what is the real outcome of the given architecture that you're trying to achieve. And then from that, we derive the business architecture. This is what shape the business should take place. What is the business goals? Who do they serve? What are the mission? What are the values of the business? What are the reporting structure? What is the hierarchy within the business? And then we'll get into the information systems architecture. And the information systems architecture is all about underneath a business process, you're going to have the information requirements for that given business process. And the term business process is consistent with the value chain. And I can show you what that looks like. So in here, we'll have, I'm sure I can find a better image, but a value chain is all about how each person relates to the given data and technology and the steps therein. So it's a sequence of activities which derive value. And this is what you'll be identifying in the information systems. And then we'll get into technology architecture, which is then a decomposition of what the information systems architecture is. And we talk about the individual technologies that enable the information to flow. So if you're using an Oracle database, that's a technology architecture. If you're using Databricks, Salesforce, et cetera, right? We're talking about significantly more tactical and hands-on, less abstract. Once you've cleared the technology architecture, we'll get into the opportunities and solutions. Now we start thinking ahead, right? So you can see that we've decomposed from vision all the way to technology implementation. And now that you have a solid footing from D, now you can go to opportunities and solutions. And now we're actually inducting, so we're deducing, now we're inducing opportunities and solution, migration and planning, implementation and governance, architecture change management. So you see that the architectural development model supports both types of thinking. And it's not so linear. You're not going to be going from A through H necessarily in real life. In real life, you're going to be jumping around. Typically, you go from A and then B, and then maybe we'll just skip C altogether and go to technology. And then we might have questions that C can answer, right? So you could be jumping around these. in iterative fashion. And the key is iterations. So one of the things that I mentioned that what has changed in the last 15 years are the expectations people have of technology and data and therefore AI. The expectations have grown significantly and place a whole lot more emphasis on why having a proper data model and a proper structure matters in your business. And this applies across industry. This is not an industry specific. Every business, whether you're an aerospace company or you're a medical clinic or a real estate agency, this is completely applicable. And I'll end on this note. So when I would say before AI was even a thing, we had to conduct interviews and develop each of those phases had to have a set of outputs that were documents or Excel spreadsheets. And then those Excel spreadsheets would then go to engineers, and the engineers would digest those Excel spreadsheets and convert them into software or functional requirements and non-functional requirements. And I can drill into that. So the functional requirements are all about the certain abilities that a system conducts, whereas the non-functional requirement is a requirement that is an ability of that system. Like as an example would be the security of a system is a non-functional requirement. Not many people care about the security up front, but just kind of implicitly you care a lot. Modularity is a non-functional requirement. That is, it shouldn't be a fragile system. It should be a system that's more like putting together Legos and modular, right? Scalability is a non-functional requirement. This means like as more users begin to use the application, that it should scale. There's another really good book about that. It's called Anti-Fragile. This is an amazing book, and I recommend it to everybody in the world. Anti-Fragile is all about the ability for a system to grow as a result of pressure. And there are various systems that exist in nature which demonstrate this ability, like ecology, our own biology. That's why you go to the gym and work out. You're causing stress, and then causes your body to break down a little bit, but then the rebuilding causes you to be stronger, right? So anti-fragile is about not being agile, but actually growing as a result of pressure and pain. So all of these concepts come together from psychology, philosophy, sales, structured systems thinking, with understanding how a company is going to be working from end to end, which is what you're looking at here, and then putting it all together in a framework. And there's no way we can even talk about like what the next 15 years are going to look like. I have no idea what the next 15 weeks are going to look like at the rate with AI. But the ability to collect and organize all the non and semi-structured data nowadays, you can go from building an architecture used to take 3 to 6 months. Now, given the right data, you should be able to build an architecture for an organization within 30 days. So that's what I do.